Welcome, everybody. I'm happy to host the panel with our three guests here. And thank you for the introduction. We are talking about ambitious outriders, how to enter a new market. And we have the honor to have the last panel before lunch. So 30 minutes to go, then you'll get something to eat. But yes, now we want to talk about how to enter a new market, how to come from the idea, the first idea, to the market, and what role the branding does play in this context. Maybe we can start with Amber, because it's already your second startup, and I'm interested in the question, how did you come to the inspiration for Makerist? Do you think there was first the desire to start something, because you already started one, but maybe that was the case, or did you see that there's an opportunity and you really have to bring a new idea in the market because you have the chance to do it? So how was it? What was the beginning of all of it?
Okay, so I just let you guys know what Makerist is. We're the leading platform for creative hobbies in Europe. So I founded Makerist with a partner, Axel Heinz, in 2013. And Axel was coming from Davanda, which many of you may know if you're German. And I was working on my own startup at the time in the wedding industry. I had an online magazine for wedding planning. And we both saw there was like an extreme interest in the DIY sector. And there wasn't really any sort of platform or any sort of community to serve that group of people. Axel, with his experience at Davanda, was saying, okay, there's like this this platform or this website where people can buy finished handmade products. And I was coming from this like women's interest online magazine for wedding planning. I said there's a huge interest of people that want to actually do it themselves. So I've seen like a really interest in the process of doing self-made things. And this is how we came to the idea for Makerist.
So you've kind of observed the market and then you've created your startup?
Yes.
Okay. Darko, you haven't found the startup yourself, but you're working for it since how many years now?
Yeah. Can you hear me? I'm working for the company for almost 3 years, but I know the idea before the company was founded, so I'm representing today Nikolai Wiet, who founded the company, and looking back, his last role or company he worked for or at before Bragi was being head of design for Harman Kardon, so doing something like 80 audio products with teams in China, and already knowing that market, and he was managing director of a design agency, so two things came together which led into the company Bragi and the first product, the Dash.
And how did you know that this is an idea you really want to work for?
Well, he may not like to hear it, but when he told me the idea for the first time, I thought, you're crazy, and if I wouldn't know you so long, I would not believe it. But
what really did you find crazy about the idea?
Well, you need to consider, so that I know the idea since 2012, and until 2015, experts were saying this is technically not possible. Well, I believe that it's if it works, it's a great opportunity, and today we can see, according to US data, that the true wireless, so not even ear computer, but true wireless market for headphones is already 25% within 2 years, so the expectations have been hit or even exceeded. But I once learned, I think Einstein said that if an idea at the beginning is not crazy, then it's not good. And yeah, you need to start with, I think, ambitious challenges if you want really to make an impact and a change.
Okay. And Nick, with Nextdoor, you also have got some big investors on board. And what kind of vision did you sell them?
I think it was the same vision that I was sold on Nextdoor, which is that everyone lives in a neighborhood. And for those of you who don't know Nextdoor, it's a private social network for your neighborhood. Everybody who joins has to verify their address. And the potential that I saw in the network for bringing it to Europe was really, I had just moved myself, and I couldn't believe, you know when you hear one of those startup ideas that you can't believe that it doesn't exist already. And I think the reason for that is it's really, really difficult. It's really, really hard, long road to build social capital in a neighborhood using a digital product. But I was so impressed by the way that they'd done it in North America that I really saw the potential for it in Europe as well.
Okay, so it was kind of your need, and you wanted to that it will be fulfilled.
Very much so, and now, you know, I know probably 10 times as many neighbors in my street and my surrounding area than I knew before, and that's all thanks to to my day job.
So now we know about your idea and where the idea came from, but now I'd like to talk about entering the market, because there are a lot of people who have good ideas, but only few succeed to really get them in the market. So what was the first step for you? Maybe, Darke, you can explain how you try to get your product in the market.
I think the first step, or I'm explaining it as Bragi showing the face to the world, was a Kickstarter campaign in February 2014. Until recently, it was the biggest one from a European company, so it made an impact and was quite successful. And one reason I believe, beside a lot of skills and a good team, was the background of the design agency. So we had everything in-house, from creative and what is needed for a good campaign, and also the skills. Plus, I think the treatment of the backers was extraordinarily good. So I think that was the breakthrough. Also for investors and for suppliers to understand, okay, if 16,000 people are paying money for something which doesn't exist and nobody knows if it will ever work, then there is a demand, and so that was a really good move at that time.
So you used the Kickstarter campaign to gain some visibility?
To gain, on one side, some money and fuel for the growth, and on the other side, of course, visibility and attraction. So based on Kickstarter, at the next CES, I think an innovation award was one, or a few awards, so it started a momentum then.
So Emma, which way did you choose? How did you enter the market?
Yeah, we really saw it's an underserved market, which gave us a big opportunity to be the first and to not have a lot of competition in that space. And we wanted just right at the very beginning to validate, like, is there really a need for what we want to do? So we set up some Facebook groups and tested over one weekend, actually, just how many people would join those groups and how many people would start leaving posts and comments about sewing or knitting. And they grew really like to 10,000 just over the weekend. And that's when we said, okay, here's a group of people. They really want to share with other people that have the same interests. There's no one doing this. Let's go and be that for them.
Nick, did you also have some kind of testing before you entered the market, or did you just go straight?
Absolutely. So I think the first stage for Nextdoor is obviously assessment of market size, and that will be similar to the way most startups would view their potential in a market. So the size of the market, looking at things like smartphone penetration, social media use. But then when we've made the decision to start in, you know, a Netherlands or a Germany or a UK, we take a long time to try and understand the market culturally. And for us, it's not just about product market fit, it's about product neighborhood fit. So it's about going into communities.
Hyper-local.
Hyper-local, indeed, as local as you can get. So it's really about talking to communities, having conversations with people who live in Cologne or Berlin or Stuttgart or Munich, and finding the different problems that Nextdoor can help solve in their neighborhood. And that we go through a long period of that before we do a press launch in a country to help, we're technology builders, and at the end of the day, we build a platform that belongs to neighbors to help one another. And so that early feedback is invaluable to helping us be successful in a country.
But could you give some examples? What channels do you use to really get in touch with people in the neighborhoods?
Sure. I think at previous products I've been at, you'd look at your social media channels, you'd look at AdWords, you'd look at, traditional customer acquisition models. At Nextdoor, it's much more about face-to-face meeting. It's much more about doing things early on that don't scale, like setting up a Facebook group over a weekend, which I think is a fantastic story. Doing things early on that don't scale, that can teach you as much as possible about the market. And so, for example, before we launched here in Germany, we had a team of people shaking hands with people at community meetings, going to meet, local business owners, talking to them about their neighborhood and about ways in which how a platform to be able to communicate with people locally would help them.
Okay, so the customers are one side, but there are also different stakeholders. Like, what kind of stakeholders are also important to enter the market? Where does a founder have to talk to?
Well, I think there's a difference between platform and software business and if you do hardware. So for us, definitely the partners for logistics, production, the suppliers for all the parts and the manufacturing was a key component to establish if you want to go to market. So I think that's the special part. And on the other side, if you have a hardware and you don't have the internet only, you need also the sales channels. So another group of stakeholders which you need to convince and agree upon and make the deals, so to say.
And where did you get the context from? Did you already bring a network?
Well, the management team is, let's say, quite experienced and brought in all the know-how and the network needed.
Mm-hmm. And one question for you, Emma. So, what do you think about timing? How important is timing? And how did you find out that now it is the right time to really enter this new market?
Well, as I said, we had this test which we wanted to see is our interest. We could validate that quite quickly, and we could. But
would you think? Do you think that it wouldn't be that easy 2 years later or earlier?
I think what's interesting for us is it's like a whole. It's a whole industry which is coming from publishing. So people have traditionally been looking to print magazines or to print pattern companies like Burda to provide them with all of the things that they need for their hobbies, or offline retailers. And it's really the shift where people, like in this time, are really doing a lot more shopping online and also want to feel more connected to the place or the brand from which they get the things for their hobby. So I think this was our opportunity. We worked with a lot of publishing companies also over the years. We have a lot of publishing companies in our investor group. So this was also really important for us to understand the market, what were the challenges also that they were facing, and to help us navigate going forward.
Mm-hmm. And now we've heard a lot about your successful strategies, but have there also been like mistakes or failures and things you wouldn't do again? You would choose another way to do it?
Well, I think what's interesting is that actually what we're offering and how we've positioned ourselves has changed somewhat since we started. So when we first started, we thought, actually, we're going to be more the e-learning space for non-academic. And we really went hard into video production, to paid video content. And we had there also systems for validating, is that a good idea? Are people going to pay for it or not? By having like a pre-booking system. So we would preview the class before we would produce it in order to, really produce only the bestseller classes. And actually, last year, we made the decision to shift from video production to focus on our growth area, which is ebooks. And this is something which is actually really exciting because here, when you talk about timing, we're able to tap into a lot of new meta trends. And I would see these, so I just tell you, what do I mean when I say ebook? I mean like a sewing pattern as a PDF file with step-by-step instructions in photo format.
So not the classic gray and white ebook reader.
So not classic Burda, because first of all, it's a digital product, so you can download it right away and print it at home. And second, that it's not just the pattern itself, but it's all the step-by-step instructions. So in a way, it's like a a simpler form of this video production, which we were doing before. And here we had already started this in 2014, I think, the end of 2014, so like 1 year after starting, as a marketplace. And we were able to access all of these independent designers who were looking to make a living doing what they love and doing pattern design. We aggregated them then in the marketplace and were able to build on a lot of sort of network effects that like we would have. Now we have about 1,000 designers in our German marketplace who are constantly also promoting Makerist and promoting their products on Makerist in their social media groups, which is really helping us to expand our reach. So we were able to tap into like, everyone is an entrepreneur. Many people want to have like the side hustle or start being independent. This whole like self-publishing trend as well. So not self-publishing as books, but self-publishing as patterns. These were all the things that really help us now, like in our second growth phase.
Okay, and Nick, your biggest competitor is nebenan.de. We have already heard about it. And what do you think? Is the competitor in the same market in Germany a threat to you, or what do you think about it?
When Nextdoor launched 6 or 7 years ago in the United States, I think there were quite a few mobile applications and websites that were attempting to go after the local space. And Nextdoor, through slow and steady growth and product innovation, managed to outlast those competitors. I think when we see a competitor in a different country that has very many similar features, let's say, to Nextdoor, be successful and get traction, that's actually pretty good news for us, because it shows that our ambition, which is to be a global company, is working in other markets. I have such a great deal of excitement and confidence about the product features that we're building at Nextdoor, and I've seen such fantastic results in some of our countries, such as in the UK, where the average is that 1 in 5 people stop and talk to their neighbors every day, whereas people who are on Nextdoor, the average is 1 in 3. And so if we can get an extra 12 million people in the United Kingdom and potentially an extra 18 million people in Germany talking to one another every day, we're doing something really positive for the world. So yes, for sure, I think when we see competitors that are very similar to us, it's potentially a threat, but it's also a very big commendation for our platform, which was the original neighborhood social network.
But I guess if you've got a competitor like nebenan.de, branding is even more important than it might be if you don't have one like it. So what are you doing about branding? So how do you build up your brand?
Sure, that's a very good point, a great question. So I think the thing about Nextdoor is the brand should really be about the neighbors. When I join a Nextdoor neighborhood, I should feel as if I'm getting the opportunity to pull my phone out of my pocket and connect with my neighbors. And so, a lot of our branding decisions take place within the product and are around building trust. So I mentioned before making sure that everybody who joins verifies their address and uses their real name. And that gives you the feeling when you enter the product of being in a room like this, where you can see people's name badges and you are confident that everybody lives in the area. And that really fuels neighborly conversations, anything from borrowing a stepladder to asking for a babysitter, through to important stuff like sharing safety tips or organizing street parties or stuff like that. And so when it comes to our branding, it's got to be hyper-local. So yes, of course, when we look at a market like Germany, we've got an on-the-ground team in Germany, some of whom are in the audience, who help us localize the product. That's the basic level. But when I talked about product neighborhood fit, that's the most important thing. The most important thing is if I join in Cologne or I join in Munich, it feels like I'm joining my neighborhood, and that it's relevant local news and events around my neighborhood, not about somewhere 4-10 miles away.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Darko? If you've got a new hardware product and you try to build up a brand, how do you do it if you've got something that is really new and you try to connect the human and the hardware? So how do you build up a brand with a brand new innovation?
Well, frankly, of course, for a hardware brand, it's quite tough to play with on the same stage like the big players who have huge organization and huge budget. So you need to be smart in that space. And we have done a lot online and PR. So in our view, most effective ways to reach end consumers and let's say people who may be interested in the product. What I think is also important is when you build a brand and the company mission and everything to think it through, not to the end, but much further than potentially only the first product or the launch. And here a lot has happened. So beyond the product which can be seen, the vision was always there to also do software solutions and other products, and everything fits into the brand to enable people and to change how computer and humans work together or integrate. But I think when it comes to brand, this is important to know where you are going to, and then how to communicate and to use which tools and channels that can even be different from country to country sometimes.
So would you agree a vision is almost always the thing you really have to build up first? Or what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, Nextdoor was actually a pivot from a previous company that kind of that failed a little bit. The founders had been working on a sports social network, which I think was the product they wanted to build as opposed to the product that the market wanted. Mm-hmm. And when they decided to pivot and they founded Nextdoor, it was really built on this idea that there was a social need for this product. And so when it comes to the vision of the product, really what's key to us all is that we want to use the power of technology to help build stronger, safer, and happier neighborhoods. And so every decision we take, whether it's a marketing decision or a product decision, has to fit into that vision.
Mm-hmm. And Emma, what do you think? What are the main ingredients to build up a valuable brand?
So there's two things which these guys just talked about, which I think are very interesting. One is like enabling people, and the other one is vision. So it's very important to know the vision for your company, because I think when people first think about brand, they think about how does like visual aspects of the brand, you know, but that's quite superficial. You have to really consider your company's brand is the identity of the company. So how do people see you? How do they talk about you in the market? How are they actually like using your services? What are you providing? So is it really providing providing some value to the community that you want to serve? So for us, it was a really interesting exercise, as I mentioned, like switching from this focus on video production to investing in this growth area of ebooks. It was a process. We just like took a step back and said, okay, well, we wanted to do this video thing. It's not really working. So people are buying it, but they're not really buying it like as we expected. Why? So we would go back in the community and find out, okay, every year we're doing a customer survey with like 20,000 people from our community base, which is a lot who are just answering. And what we found is like people just want to do their hobby. They don't really want to do it that good. So they don't care if they're perfect. They don't care all the time about learning like new techniques, which we were trying to sell them. They just want to have something fun to do and to share that experience with other people that are also interested in that hobby. So in the beginning, even with the name, we said Makerist as a name was the idea of maker and artist. The idea was focusing on people that are interested in doing DIY themselves, so to enable actually the makers with everything they need to do their hobbies, so these video skills, the patterns and materials. And we had to take a step back last year and look at that and say, okay, are we really offering them also the products that they want? And how can we redefine the identity of the company and be more clear what we're offering? One of the things that we did is to say we're not just enabling the end user to get everything that they need to do their hobby, but we're really focusing now on enabling this network of pattern designers to better support their own communities. So this has been like a huge shift and a huge help for us in terms of building our brand. We've seen this effect that they are already promoting us among their own communities and in their own networks. And so now we're just constantly doing like more designer education.
So you really have to evaluate your business model during the time.
Yeah.
Okay. And one last question, Nick. If you would have one advice to give to a founder, so what advice would it be if it comes to having a vision and bring it to the market? Only one.
Sure thing. I think I'm going to go back to what Amber said about the Facebook group, because I think that's just such a lovely idea in that, you know, do things early on that don't scale, but that you think gives you the confidence to then build a product that you can take to market.
Darko, what would your advice be?
Never give up.
And
No, well, it's interesting. We had the question, when is the right time? So I'm following technology for a while and sometimes had ideas which took 10, 15 years to get through. And you can be too early. Of course, you can be too late. And I think Amber also explained it nicely that you also need to be flexible and adjust. So even the basic idea is good, the approach may change or may have to be changed. So never give up may fit always.
okay, and Amber, your advice?
I would just say, really make sure that what you're offering is what people want. So what is the value that you're bringing to the people that you want to serve?
Okay, thank you very much.